What's going on, Minties? Omar from Near Mint Condition here, and today I'm going to be looking at my top 10 favorite X-Men Omnibus and Oversized Hardcover. This is going to be a countdown. Some of you guys have suggested this topic to me many months ago, and a few of you have still commented that you still want to see this, so this is your fault. But no, seriously, thank you very much for all these suggestions. Now, I did decide to keep this Oversized Hardcover and Omnibus only X-Men, so you won't see things like X-Factor or Wolverine or X-Force in here. I may make that list another day, but for now, here's my countdown, my top 10. And welcome back, everybody. I just wanted to say that before I start this, there will be some spoilers in here, so just as a heads up, but some of these stories are well over 10, 20, 30 years old. And also, I realize some of the books I'm going to be talking about are out of print, so keep that in mind. The point of this video is hopefully Marvel will get off their ass and actually start printing some of these, or reprinting them in some cases. And reprinting some things like Fall of the Mutants as an omnibus, much like Mutant Massacre here. So let's get started. Kicking off this countdown with number 10 is Messiah Complex. Now I realize this is an oversized hardcover, but I have a feeling that Marvel will eventually do the right thing and release this as an omnibus along with all the other stories that tie into the Messiah Complex trilogy. Why I chose this? Well, first of all, this particular hardcover collects the Messiah Complex one-shot, Uncanny X-Men 492 to 494, X-Men 205 to 207, New X-Men 44 to 46, and X-Factor 25 through 27. And I chose this because I think this is the moment when I realized that, oh, okay, good, the editors at Marvel are making the X titles connect again. So, pretty much after the events of House of M, the mutant population went down to 198. And then, out of nowhere, in the one-shot right here, drawn by the wonderful Mark Silvestri, written by Ed Brubaker, Cerebro picks up a signal. And now everyone rushes out to find this new baby. Not just the Puritans and the X-Men, but also the original Marauders, the classic Marauders from the Mutant Massacre. Even Gambit joined them during the Mike Carey run. But anyway, this was the return of the X-Men, just interacting with other titles again. They seem so disconnected, especially with Peter David's X-Factor, and then Kyle and Yost were doing their own thing in New X-Men, but this seems to have brought back everything, like, oh, the X titles are actually talking to each other again, and things that are happening in one book are affecting the other books. So I was really happy to see this, and that's why I put it on my list as number 10, because this made it feel like, oh, there is hope for the future of the X titles. And number 9 on my list is New X-Men Omnibus by Grant Morrison, and for the most part, Frank Quietly. This collects New X-Men 114 to 154, so adjectiveless X-Men became New X-Men when Grant Morrison took over the book, because it's Grant Morrison. You do whatever the hell he wants. And it also collects Annual 2001. So the reason this is on here is because this is the book that brought me back into comics. Before this, I had left comic books right after Onslaught. I've had enough. I was just done with really crappy stories, and I wanted to take a break. I found other interests. So this is the book that was, a friend of mine was like, hey, you need to go back and read New X-Men by Grant Morrison. And I read the first arc, and I'm like, okay, show me more. And this was kind of my gateway drug to returning back into comic books. This has the return of Emma Frost, and she joins Cyclops, Jean, and Beast, and Wolverine, and Professor X, along with the mysterious powerhouse known as Zorn, who has a star for a head. But that mystery is later to be revealed as he was not Zorn at all. There was no mutant named Zorn. And it also includes characters like ugly characters, like, what is his name? Bird Boy Beak, that was it. Angel, and then, of course, the quintuplets, the Stepford Cuckoos. And it doesn't just have new characters. That's not what drew me back, but also, I mean, right off the bat, we get the destruction of Genosha. Eventually, we get the death of Jean. Yes, we get the revelation that Zorn was really Magneto, and that Professor X has a twin sister, and her name is Cassandra Nova. And then the ending of his run is drawn, it's like a Days of Future Past kind of storyline, drawn by the wonderful Mark Silvestri. This was his return back to Marvel Comics. So, I mean, just look at this artwork. If you don't own this book, this is, like I said, number 9 on my top 10 list, and it is just a wonderful collection of stories in here. Grant Morrison, the reason I came back to comic books. Next up on the list is Uncanny X-Men Fatal Attractions. I mean, look at this thing. This is the size of an omnibus. Why it's not named an omnibus, I don't know. Oh yeah, I forgot I had Larry's Hama sign that for me. Anyway, this collects Uncanny X-Men 298 to 305, and then skipping all the way to 315, Annual number 17, X-Factor 87 to 92, X-Men Unlimited number 1 and 2, X-Force 25, X-Men 25, and Wolverine 75, along with Excalibur 71, which is the aftermath of the Fatal Attraction storyline. The main thing here is, of course, well, before that, we have the death of Magic, right? The death of Ileana, the death of Colossus' sister. They bury her, and then Colossus ends up betraying the X-Men, and he takes off with the Acolytes to join Magneto up in Asteroid M. At the time, I think it was rumored that Magneto was coming back because he had previously died in X-Men 3, which is Chris Claremont's final issue, and he's alive. Of course, it's Magneto. But also the return of Cable. Cable comes back and joins X-Force, and there's this really good father-son moment with Cannonball. But the big battle, of course, the big thing that everybody remembers from Fatal Attractions is the fight between the X-Men and Magneto, where Professor Xavier not only wipes Magneto's mind away, causing the events of Onslaught, but also something happens between Magneto and Wolverine. Here's the return of Cable that I was talking about. It's just wonderful artists in here. We're talking about Greg Capullo, Andy Kubert, Adam Kubert, John Romita Jr., and I know he's not everybody. Oh, Jay Lee. Shit, I forgot he was in here. But here, let me show you guys the fight. Early Brandon Peterson stuff when he was just kind of a Jim Lee clone. Jan Dursema. So the fight here is the one I'm talking about, where Professor Xavier is able to walk again by wearing the suit, and he takes a handful of X-Men to Asteroid M to take down Magneto. And now during this particular fight, Wolverine and Magneto have it out, and Magneto does the unthinkable. The thing that anybody that has been reading comic books for a long period of time has thought, why hasn't, like, Magneto just taken Wolverine's bones, or his adamantium skeleton, out of his body? And that's exactly what he does. He rips out the adamantium from his body, almost mortally wounding him. And that's when Professor Xavier says that's enough, wipes out his mind. I mean, this has so many awesome moments. And then the letter that he writes at the end, because he leaves the X-Men. Wolverine doesn't seem to think he's worthy enough of being with the X-Men anymore. And he writes a letter to the Jubilee and telling her just to stick with Professor X. He'll do right by her. And, oh, man, I remember even, oh, yeah, and then we find out that he also has bone claws, that his adamantium was just laced, that the claws were actually his. All this time we thought they were actual adamantium claws coming out of his body. But yeah, this scene right here, where he writes her this wonderful letter, and he takes off, riding off to Wolverine adventures in his own solo book. And here is the aftermath in Excalibur 71. This book needed to be on my list. Number 7, X-Men by Jim Lee and Chris Claremont, Volume 2. This one has been out of print for a while. Only saw one printing. What the hell, Marvel? This is Jim Lee. So this contains Uncanny X-Men 273 to 280, X-Factor 63 to 70, X-Men 1 through 9, and 10 through 11. Just the A stories, not the B stories that Mark Texeria drew. And Ghost Rider 26 and 27, which was a crossover event with X-Men Adjectiveless. This is the beginning of the Adjectiveless X-Men. I mean, I could just easily point out the fact that this particular collection contains the #1 best-selling comic book of all time. But I'm not going to do that. This book has, just so much awesome in here. God bless, look at that cover by Jim Lee. This is when Jim Lee started co-plotting Uncanny X-Men. So, a lot of reminiscent of the days of John Byrne and Chris Claremont. So this particular book collects the return of Xavier. He's been gone from the X-Men since issue 200, when he took off with Lilandra and the Shi'ar. But he's back now. And not only that, but it also shows the final battle with the Shadow King during the Muir Island saga, and which leaves Legion in a comatose state, which will probably play a later part in another story that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But the selling point for me was this right here. This right here was the Chris Claremont and Will Spertasio story called Endgame, and it happened in X-Factor. This is the final battle, quote unquote, with Apocalypse, between X-Factor and Apocalypse. And it all takes place on the moon, so you have the appearance of the Inhumans, you have the first appearance of the Dark Riders that take out the team of X-Factor. This is the story where Cyclops has to send his son to the future in order to save his life. And who does that son end up becoming? Well, some dude named Cable. That's who. But yeah, this kicks off. I mean, God, look, this is X-Men 1. Why would I not put this on this list? This book, why isn't this book on an evergreen? This book has to belong on everyone's shelf. It is gorgeous to look at. And now they have a Jim Lee extra large coming out. It's one of those big, huge books. And they raised the price from $50 to $100. And while, yes, Jim Lee's artwork is amazing to look at, and I'm sure it's going to be gorgeous in oversized format, that's not what fans want. They want a reprint of this book so they can have all the stories, not just Jim Lee's stories. All the stories that were in here. Come on, Marvel, do the right thing and reprint these books. So yes, this is number 7. Number 6, the very first X-Men crossover event, and I'm talking about Mutant Massacre. So this particular omnibus, now called an omnibus, originally released as an oversized hardcover. That's why I was saying earlier that I have hopes that Marvel does the right thing and reprints a lot of these with the omnibus label on the spine. Not like this right here, but like this. This contains Uncanny X-Men 210 to 219, X-Men Annual, Uncanny X-Men Annual 11, X-Factor 9 through 17, X-Factor Annual 2, New Mutants 46, Thor 373 to 374, and 377 to 378, Power Pack 27, Daredevil 238, Fantastic Four versus the X-Men 1 through 4, and the other miniseries, Avengers versus the X-Men, or X-Men versus the Avengers 1 through 4. And man, you talk about a omnibus that is packed full of awesome stories. So you have the introduction of the Marauders in here, right? It's a group of just badass mutants that only have one goal, and that's to kill mutants. And that's what they do. A lot of. They massacre just about every Morlock in the tunnels, and only just a few get out alive. They cripple the X-Men, like literally within the first issue. They take out Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler, and even force Colossus to kill one of their numbers. He ends up killing Riptide, breaking his neck. I mean, we're talking about the purest X-Man just losing it when he sees his friends mowed down. We see the reunion between Sabretooth and Wolverine. And by reunion, I mean just balls out fucking throwdown. Just an awesome fight between the two characters. And no, not this. I'm talking about the fight between 211. Yes, right here. And 212. But we also see the Angel getting crucified in the tunnels, which leads to them clipping his wings later on. And I think, yeah, he's also saved by Thor. That's where Thor comes in. We see the first mention of the 12. The 12 that will lead the future of mutants. That story played out during Alan Davis and Chris Claremont's storyline, the 12, later on. Just, man. And then not only that, but then we get the two little miniseries, the X-Men versus the Fantastic Four, or Fantastic Four versus the X-Men, where they find Reed Richards' hidden journal. You find out that he was a douchebag that planned the whole trip to get the Fantastic Four their powers. Maybe, maybe not. You should read it. It's awesome. But you also get the X-Men, X-Men versus Avengers little 4-issue miniseries, where 3/4 of it is solid. The other fourth, unfortunately, Roger Stern did not get to finish out the story the way he wanted it to finish it, because he wanted to keep Magneto a villain, whereas the editors were like, nah, he's good now. He's good. So Roger Stern and Mark Silvestri did the first 3 issues, and Tom DeFalco ended up finishing that story. Number 5. Now, this is an omnibus that was out of print for a while, and Marvel did the right thing and brought it back into print. This is the Age of Apocalypse omnibus. This particular omnibus collects Uncanny X-Men 320 and 321, X-Men 40 and 41, Cable 20, X-Men Alpha, Amazing X-Men 1 through 4, Astonishing X-Men 1 through 4, Factor X 1 through 4, Gambit and the Externals 1 through 4, Generation Next 1 through 4, Weapon X 1 through 4, Excalibur, sure, 1 through 4, X-Man 1 through 4, X-Men Omega, Age of Apocalypse the Chosen, and the X-Men Ashcan, number 2. How could I not put this on the list? I'm a huge sucker for alternate timeline stories. This is the story where Legion wakes up from that coma that I was talking about earlier, and he goes back to the past to kill Magneto once and for all to make his dad's life a lot better. But instead, he fucks up and kills Xavier, making this alternate reality come to life. And this is a world where Magneto leads the X-Men against the forces of Apocalypse. And of course, Apocalypse is still the bad guy, and he's like trying to destroy and wipe out humanity. He's also joined by his wife Rogue in this fight, and they have a son named Charles. And of course, this harkens back to that issue 274 that I showed you earlier, where she's touching Magneto because he is one of the few people that can touch her. So that is really cool. You see a lot of familiar faces. Some of the X-Men are now bad guys. Some of the bad guys are good. Morph became a household name because of this, even though he was the Changeling. Yeah, this is just so awesome. And the art in here, I mean, you have Joe Madureira, you have Adam Kubert, you have Tony Daniels. They're all, and you have Roger Cruz, who I was never a fan of, but whatever. Steve Epting, Steven Scroggs, who went on to do the Matrix storyboard. You might have heard of that movie. But just all this talent, Ken Lashley, all this talent in here. This is one of the last few crossovers in the 90s that I've really, really enjoyed. And, I mean, it honestly feels like it's in the magnitude that would make a Hollywood summer blockbuster proud. I love this story, and it is still available, and I highly suggest it. You don't need to know a lot about X-Men to enjoy this. This is a story that, you know, familiar characters are just taken out and put into different situations. That's all you need to know. The X-Men are good. Bad Guy Apocalypse. Enjoy it. Number 4. Damn, this list is getting harder and harder for me. This is X-Men by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee, Volume 1. Again, why the hell is this out of print? Marvel, come on, do the right thing. Reprint this. This collects Uncanny X-Men 244 to 269 and annual number 13, along with the story from Classic X-Men 39. I'm not even sure why the hell this is a Jim Lee omnibus, because the man only drew 5 issues in this collection. But the reason this is on my list is this is one of my favorite times of the X-Men. And I know I'm in the minority here, but I love the Outback years. I love when the team was hanging out with Gateway. And you have Storm, Wolverine, Longshot, Rogue, Psylocke, Dazzler, Colossus, and Havoc. They're all hanging out in Australia. But the team is about to implode after the events of Inferno. Wolverine gets taken down by the Reavers, and the only one that can help him is this new character named Jubilee when she appeared in issue 244 in the mall. And Wolverine doesn't know her, and he's up there crucified with a big giant X. Actually, let me show you that awesome cover. If I were to name my top 10 favorite covers of all time, this would be up there. Oh my god. Mark Silvestri on artwork, Dan Green inking his wonderful art. Where was I? Yeah, so Wolverine is taken down by the Reavers, and his only hope is Jubilee. Meanwhile, Longshot and Storm are gone. So Psylocke tricks the X-Men into going through the Siege Perilous and just starting over anew. She's like, okay guys, we can't do anything else. Everything has gone to hell. We got to start over a new life. And the Siege Perilous is a thing that Roma gave them, the goddess Roma, after the Fatal Attraction storyline. I'm sorry, after the Fall of the Mutant storyline. That at any point they can walk through this in this little portal and start over a new life. They can be different people. And that's what they do. They choose to do that. They choose to give up. It's crazy. But I loved every minute of it. And then we have the X of Vengeance storyline where we get a brand new Psylocke where she becomes a ninja assassin badass. And then we have the Rogue fight with Miss Marvel. This is the first appearance of Psylocke. We have Psylocke where she becomes a ninja, an Asian assassin. Acts of Vengeance. This is probably one of the best Acts of Vengeance story. We have Forge and Banshee doing a buddy cop kind of search for X-Men storyline. God, I love this time. And yeah, Jim Lee only drew 5 issues, but man, some of the best in here. Including, like I said, that fight with Miss Marvel and Rogue. We also get the first appearance of Gambit in issue 266. Yeah, let's get there. Cover's drawn by Andy Kubert, and the little box up there is drawn by Jim Lee. But neither one of them draw the inside. It's Mike Collins that draws the inside. And yeah, first appearance of Gambit. But this also has one of my favorite... Oh, this is the 267 drawn by Whilce Portacio, who's friends with Jim Lee. And then this right here. probably one of my favorite issues of Uncanny X-Men, and that is 268. And this is kind of a flashback issue. It's a flashback of a young Wolverine teaming up with Captain America, and their mission is to save a young Natasha Romanoff, a little girl named Natasha Romanoff. And it goes back between present time and the flashback. Oh, it's just an awesome storyline. And, I mean, here's issue 269. Come on, Marvel. There's no reason not to reprint this book. This is a gorgeous book that everyone needs to have in their library. And here's the classic X-Men storyline that he drew. So sorry, he did 5.5 issues in here. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, there's covers by him too. Sure, justify that $125 price. Number 3. Like I said, this list is getting harder and harder. This is Astonishing X-Men Omnibus. Only had one printing. Collecting issues 1 through 24 of Astonishing X-Men and the giant size one. This is written by Buffy's Joss Whedon and drawn by John Cassaday. All of this is drawn by John Cassaday. If anyone brought me back home to comic books, it was Joss Whedon and Astonishing X-Men. While I enjoyed Grant Morrison's new X-Men, it started to feel less and less like X-Men, and I was kind of bored of the villains that he was using and kind of tired of some of the storylines that were going on. I wanted just superheroics back, and that's what I got. Not only that, but Joss Whedon also brought back Colossus in a tear-jerking moment, and the return of the Fastball special. Oh man, this is just, while not every story is great, of course I'm looking at Danger right now, I say 90% of this book is awesome. I mean, for God's sakes, Joss Whedon was able to make Cyclops into a badass in just one panel. Oh man, there's so much awesome in this. Why this book only had one printing, I don't know, but it really needs a second printing. We have a lot more people collecting these oversized hardcovers and omnibuses, so it's time for Marvel just to go ahead and reprint them. I mean, it's not like they're going to lose money. The hell, some of these books go for outrageous prices on eBay, which is crazy. But like I tell everybody, just be patient. I have high hopes that Marvel will eventually, now especially that the MCU got the rights back to X-Men and Fantastic Four, I have a feeling we're going to see some more reprints. And this is the panel that I was talking about. To Me, My X-Men. God damn, I have talked about that story so many times on the show. Number 2. We're down to our last 2, and I had to throw this in here. And if you've been a fan of this channel for a long time, you know that I've done my top 20 favorite moments of X-Men where I had the panel help me out. And the "Sir, I'd like to shake your hand" moment from this book made it on that list. I love this book. I love this storyline. This is Fall of the Mutants, also not an omnibus, but I'm hoping that when they reprint this, it will be an omnibus. This collects New Mutants 55 through 61, Uncanny X-Men 220 to 227, X-Factor 19 through 26, Captain America 339, Daredevil 252, Fantastic Four 312, Incredible Hulk 340, and Power Pack 35. And it's weird because even though the teams never meet each other in this storyline, the impact was still so damn powerful. You had the suicide attempt by Angel where he tries to kill himself because he doesn't have wings anymore and he feels worthless. And Apocalypse recruits him to be one of his horsemen. He becomes Death, so he comes back as Archangel. You also have the death of Doug, who was probably the most worthless mutant in New Mutants, but I mean, his death was so powerful. Here, let's look at that. And this is the scene right here where it is revealed that Archangel is Warren, and X-Factor's like, "Dude, Warren, how could you? How could you betray us?" And Warren's like, "I don't give a fuck. I got wings again, and I'm blue, and they're metal. I'm a bad dude." And that's exactly what he was. Holy shit. Oh, yeah, sorry. I got distracted. We're going to look at the death of Doug real quick. I mean, like I said, he was the most worthless character in New Mutants. His mutant power was he was able to translate things, and he gets shot saving Rain, and she doesn't even notice. Like, that's how pointless and sad he was. The girl that he ended up loving, he saved her life, and she didn't even notice. Until later, when they're like, "Hey, where's Doug?" And they even make a joke. "Oh, he's probably hiding behind a rock." No, he's dead. Oh, man. What a great story. And then, of course, you have the Uncanny X-Men story, where the X-Men make their ultimate sacrifice to save humanity. They give their own lives up. And in doing that, they are given the reward of not being to be able to be detected by electronic devices. I know it's weird. I don't know. But they're not really dead, of course. They end up going to the Outback, which, like I mentioned earlier, is my favorite time of X-Men. But this right here, there's so many memorable moments, so many awesome lines. That's why it's my number 2. Now, let's look at my number 1. This list was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. This is Uncanny X-Men Volume 3 by Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum, and it's Paul Smith. Now, I could have gone the easy route and just said, hey, let's do Uncanny X-Men Volume 1, which is the beginning of the new team, the new X-Men, like Wolverine and Colossus and Storm. Or Volume 2, which contained the Dark Phoenix saga and Days of Future Past, and of course the classic issue 150. But I had to go with one that meant the most to me. The stories that impacted me as not only as a kid, but as an adult now, and as a father of 2 little girls. And look no further than this. This collects Uncanny X-Men 154 to 175, X-Men Annual 6 and 7, Marvel Graphic Novel number 5, Wolverine 1 through 4, Special Edition X-Men 1, and Magic, the limited series 1 through 4. This was tough. It really was, but I had to go with this one because this collects God Loves, Man Kills. If you have been watching the channel for a long time, you know that that is my favorite X-Men story of all time. We've done a review of it on Old Reader, New Reader, and it gets no better than that. It also contains the From the Ashes storyline, and like I mentioned earlier, it's got Paul Smith on artwork, the return of Dave Cockrum, the Wedding of Wolverine. The Wolverine limited series is collected in here. Issues 1 through 4, yeah, they're in here. That's the awesome story with Chris Claremont and Frank Miller where they take Wolverine to Japan and he ends up reuniting with Mariko. They get engaged and there's a wedding and he tells Nightcrawler to bring the beer. I mean, this is my childhood. So yes, not only the wedding of Wolverine, but Rogue joining the team, Storm becoming a vampire, Storm taking down Callisto for the leadership of the Morlocks. And this is Storm without powers, too. Or she couldn't use her powers. Oh, man. I could go on and talk about this for days. We also get the storyline how Illyana became aged. How she got older. This is such an awesome omnibus. I know there's going to be a Volume 4 eventually. But I think Volume 3 will stand as my favorite one. Because this was my childhood. This was my X-Men. And that is my top 10 list. I want to thank everyone who commented on previous videos giving me this idea. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And I hope I didn't come across as an asshole who's like, hey, I got these omnibuses, look at me. Because that wasn't the point. If you guys want me to do another top 10 list, I'd be more than happy to. If this is your first time watching the show, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you liked what you saw, and the like button if you liked what you saw. I'd also like to take this time to say, if you enjoy these type of videos, please consider being a Patreon. That is on the description of the channel. I will put a link there. And thank you very much for watching. Again, this was Omar. And remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be near mint.